They know the system has to end. They just are afraid to push that red button because millions of people will die. Millions of people will end up with zero. They won't be able to buy groceries, food, or anything. It all is contingent upon this game still going. And a bank like Deutsche Bank goes down with 50 trillion in derivatives. The add-on effect, all these banks are interlinked. They own the same assets. They have the same customers. So a big bank, they call them too big to fail banks. The reality of a too big to fail bank failing is the end of all banks. And when you have the end of all banks, you have an end of a monetary system.
Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a returning guest, Bix Weir. You can find Bix on Road to Ruta, that's his YouTube channel. Also, you can find him on his website, Road to Ruta. And I am very happy to have Bix back on the X22 Report Spotlight. Bix, welcome back to the Spotlight.
Hey, thanks, Dave. It's good to be here.
Hey, thanks for being here. And let's just start off with the good guys and the bad guys that relates to the economy. Now, we have the GDP numbers at 4.1%, unemployment down to something like 3.9%. And from everyone that's looking at the economy, they think, wow, the economy is roaring. Everything's better. Everything's great. I mean, what is the plan here with the good guys and the bad guys? Is this supposed to happen? Are we supposed to see an economy improving like this?
Well, it's one of those field of dreams scenarios. If you build it, they will come. If you say the numbers are good, then the numbers will be good. And, who knows what the official numbers are versus reality. If you believe the shadow stats guys, there's no connection between what they say and what's really going on. So are things better than they were? Probably, but nobody knows. The numbers have been so skewed and so lied about for so long. Anything the government says is just based off the last lie. So yes, Trump is lying just like Obama lied, just like Bush lied, just like Clinton lied. Well, Clinton did it a little more sneakily in that he changed the metrics on how to, determine the CPI and all that stuff. But in reality, it's all a con game. And what you're doing, like, for example, Trump had to build off the old con. So Obama had his numbers and then Trump has to invent new numbers. Trump put the guy who was the head of computer rigging at Goldman Sachs, put him as the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin. That was his job at Goldman Sachs. He was the head of IT, which is the head of the computer trading, the rigging of the markets. So there is no difference, and it is all a con game, and it'll keep going until it ends. And that's where I think we're headed over the next 6 months or so, is the end of the old system and the beginning of a new one.
I mean, do you think he's doing this to push the economy to the edge where he can, say, hey, look, the economy's doing great. And we saw him, the corporate media is reporting on it, saying that he's calling out the Fed here, saying, hey, why are you raising interest rates? Do you think he's trying to maneuver and show that, hey, the Fed is raising the rates, the debt is coming due, the economy's doing well, and look what the Fed is doing right now. This might not be the smartest time to do this. Do you think he's kind of setting them up?
I don't think so. I mean, they can make anything happen with computers and derivatives. The rigging of gold and silver is absolutely key because you can't have alternatives to the U.S. dollar. And what the Fed does or says doesn't really matter until it comes into the markets. And the markets are 100% rigged. And we've proven it time and time again over the years. Even best-selling books have been written about it. And the Exchange Stabilization Fund is where the real power comes from. That's the behind-the-scenes kitty of money, but not only money, of unlimited derivatives. And everything these days are derivatives. So yes, they can put the stock market where they want, the bond market where they want, the US dollar where they want, the cryptos where they want for the most part, and gold and silver obviously have been conned and rigged for so long. The question I come to, if Trump says something bad about the Fed, it's part of one tool in a larger operation. And that larger operation, it has to do with derivatives run by Steve Mnuchin out of the Treasury. And the basement of the Treasury, there's a computer trading floor where he does most of his work, as well as through the New York Fed, where there's another computer trading floor. But when you look at it, you stand back and you say, all you got to do is program in, buy X amount of futures and options, press a button. All Mnuchin has to do is click his mouse, and boom, it translates into huge buying power or huge selling power in certain areas. We can destroy countries with that, as we're doing with the Turkish lira, as we're doing in Venezuela. The U.S. right now, at least for right now, has control of the computer programs, and we can take out people with a click of a mouse. It's really crazy when you sit back and think about this electronic game we're in the middle of, that it all relies on one click of a mouse at the U.S. Treasury.
But if the U.S. continually does this, I mean, there's calls from like Russia saying, listen, we should trade in our national currencies. We should bypass the dollar. We see Germany, they're looking to create their own payment system, just like China and Russia, because they're nervous and afraid of the U.S. We see Turkey, just like you mentioned, that they're going to be trading their national currency with other countries. The same with Iran, same thing with China, Russia, and the rest. I mean, if all these countries start to move away from the dollar and they start to trade in their national currencies, how does that benefit the U.S.?
Well, ultimately, the U.S. can end this game tomorrow if we wanted. We could click a mouse and destroy the entire economic system with the derivatives going sideways. So the U.S. has ultimate control of ending all the unbacked fiat system. And that was always the plan since the invention of the Fed in 1913, was to run it as long and hard as possible, soaking up all the benefits of unbacked fiat money, meaning, building out your military, building houses, roads, bridges, and then at some point destroy the old system and start fresh. And that's what was said in the Road to Ruta comics from the Fed Boston. And that's what's going on right now. So yeah, this is a plan. Trump's, they can talk about, balancing the budget and getting the debt under control. They can talk all they want. The idea is, no, we don't want that. That would be the worst thing. All that would mean is that there's no money out there just to pay the interest on all the new money created. So the plan is not to pay off any debt. The plan is to run it as long and hard as possible and then destroy it with a click of a mouse.
You're saying that, okay, the plan is to run this long and hard. I mean, this has been going on for quite a while. I mean, since 2008.
Since 2013 or 1913.
Since 1913, but as of 2008, we went through the Great Recession and they started to really, put this into overdrive.
Well, it became visible.
Yeah, to everyone. I mean, how much longer? I mean, we've been doing this, for 10 years now, since 2008?
Well, the computer rigging started in the 1960s with Alan Greenspan's original programs that he wrote, and then it got implemented when he was the head of the CEA, the Council of Economic Advisors for Ford. And then those computer programs that are run out of the Fed and the U.S. Treasury still, they didn't become visible till the dot-com booms and all that. But this stuff has been going on for a very long time. And, the U.S. will pull the plug when it's no longer advantageous to us to be the world's reserve currency. There's no other country that's going to take our spot. It will end before any other country takes our spot. Nobody really wants to take our spot either. Who wants to be the world's reserve currency? You got to back it up with military, and you have to kill people just to keep the system going and take out dictators and rig every market. Nobody wants to be in charge of that. But the U.S. has done it, and we have been in charge of it for a long time. But being in charge of the world's reserve currency means you can destroy it with a blink of an eye. And that's kind of where we're getting, is the plan is to destroy it. And it has to do more with the good guys and the bad guys and what's going on behind the scenes, not specifically with what you hear on, CNBC or on Bloomberg or anything like that. There's deeper things going on. And I think we are coming to a head. And I think it's exciting for gold and silver and crypto owners. But it's not going to be smooth. It's going to be ugly and crazy. And, with the markets shutting down and banks shutting down, it's very scary.
So when you say, behind the scenes, things that are happening, what are you talking about?
Well, look at the deep state being removed. I mean, if you look at, would these things happen? There's been more, and the pedophilia guys and all this, there's been more people arrested on pedophilia charges than in the last 100 years in the United States. More people arrested on Trump's watch than in the last 100 years. If you look at where the rigging of the markets will take us, JP Morgan, the largest derivative holder as far as U.S. banks, I think Citibank might have passed them up, but JP Morgan and silver derivatives, they have their shortest short position, smallest short position they've had since the takeover of Bear Stearns, which was like the transfer of the huge short position. They're down to, Ted Butler estimates like 16,000 contracts, thinking maybe next report, which is I think released on Friday, they might get down to 10,000 contracts of silver shorts. That is unheard of for JP Morgan. It usually ranges from 20 to 50,000 contracts. On the flip side of that, JP Morgan has over, I think it's over $1 billion, but Ted Butler estimates over 750 million ounces of physical silver. And that is such a gigantic amount of silver, the largest silver hoard in the history of the world that people knew about. And what's it doing there? It is just sitting there waiting for JP Morgan to get rid of all his shorts. And then JP Morgan goes long and they make $1. They'll make $800 million. They have 800 million ounces of physical, $800 million for every $1 that silver price goes up. It is the biggest, it is the sneakiest, worst move you can imagine for people thinking that silver's in a fair market value type of exchange. It's not. It's controlled by computers and derivatives, and JP Morgan has positioned themselves to become the mega ultra trillionaire company on the price explosion of the price of silver.
I mean, what you're telling us is that the price of silver is going to move up once they do this.
Well, but that's the other problem. Who's at the other side of that trade? So if you have, say, let's just round it up and say JP Morgan has 800 million ounces of silver. For every $1 goes up, they make $800 million, right? Silver's been suppressed for over 150 years. Let's say silver goes to the all-time high of 50. So you take that's $35 per ounce. $35 per ounce times 800 million is how much JP Morgan would have profited. But why stop at 50? If there's nobody to short the electronic contracts anymore, why not go to 500 or 1,000? See, that's the problem. That's why the Hunt brothers were taken out of their position. They had 100 million ounces of physical silver, and they were taken out because it was too dangerous. So in the 1980, 1981, they took out the Hunt brothers. The exchange basically said, all right, there's no more buyers of silver, only sellers, and the price went from $50 to $20 in a matter of a month. Now we got the same thing happening, except the other way, and it's going to be on steroids. That JP Morgan has all this physical silver, and they're going to end up very soon with a long position on the COMEX, and then there's no one left to short. You've got right now the technical funds are shorting because money's free and they can do that, but they don't understand that just because they have a stop loss in as far as if silver starts running high, that doesn't mean that trade will get filled. And they will cover, they got derivatives, there's other types of derivatives as well. It's a mess. And the only way it can release that mess, it's a coiled spring type of mess, is for silver to take that moonshot that we've always been waiting for. The markets are broken. The price shut down. That's the other thing. Is most likely the COMEX and the LBMA will just shut down and say, this is a force majeure. No one knew this was going to happen. Deutsche Bank went down, and all of a sudden, the third-party derivative scene's a mess. So they'll just shut down. And then, how do you reopen after something like that? Nobody knows.
And what happens to gold during this period of time?
Hopefully the gold price suppression will end as well. Now, I think gold is very different than silver in that silver is an absolutely necessary industrial commodity, whereas gold is a monetary metal. It used to be the only alternative when the U.S. dollar fiat money died was gold. Gold has always been turned to in the past. Now there's another alternative, and that's cryptocurrencies. So yeah, gold might do well, but there's not a lot of old gold bugs around anymore. The majority of humanity will be saying, I'm used to, going to the Starbucks and using my cell phone to buy stuff. So I don't think gold will fare as well as it should have had there not been massive amounts of manipulation over the past, 100 years.
Now, you mentioned cryptocurrencies, and we've seen almost the same type of manipulation that we've been, watching in the precious metals market. I mean, Bitcoin went, sky high, and then all of a sudden, was it Mt. Gox and others were just, dumping Bitcoin, bringing the price lower, lower, and lower. And here we are today. I mean, do you see the same type of manipulation going on with cryptocurrencies?
Well, you mean for Mt. Gox, you mean the Mt. Gox trustee that was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things you got to look at and say, okay, it feels like, Bitcoin just crashed automatically, but the reality was Bitcoin was $4,000 1 year ago. So it went up faster than it went down, which is completely the opposite of what silver does. Silver will go up smooth and steady, have a final blow off top, and then just crash. So it's kind of the opposite. Bitcoin crashed up and then has been slow and steady down since. Yes, there's a lot of manipulation. It's the same computer manipulation that's done on the COMEX, with swap trades and spoofing and all that stuff. But in the cryptos, it's an unregulated market. And, all the crypto people say, yeah, we don't like governments in there. Well, this is the kind of market you get when there's no governments. You got, people lying, cheating, and stealing in these exchanges that are completely derivative exchanges. When you hold your cryptos in an exchange, they don't buy your crypto for you. They'll debit your account. It's kind of like the stock market. Your 401k, they don't actually go out and buy the stock for you and put it in your name. No, they credit your account and you get your statement every year. So it's very similar. I do think the exchanges are completely out of control. I've been saying that for years, even before cryptos came around. And the DTCC, who's supposed to clear every trade, meaning do the paperwork for the ownership and the exchange of funds and make sure all the paperwork, make sure everything's done on the level, has not done that since the 1970s. They can't, especially with computers in there trading, million shares every second. And the SEC has already come out and said there's 100 million shares or 300 million shares every day, every single day, that are not settled by the DTCC. It is an insane game, rehypothecation everywhere, and it will end. And when the day it does end, everybody's going to freak out. And that's kind of why they've been allowing it to keep going on is they know the system has to end. They just are afraid to push that red button.
Why do you think they're afraid to push the red button?
Because millions of people will die. Millions of people will end up with zero. They won't be able to buy groceries, food, or anything. It all is contingent upon this game still going. And a bank like Deutsche Bank goes down with 50 trillion in derivatives. The add-on effect, all these banks are interlinked. They own the same assets. They have the same customers. So a big bank, they call them too big to fail banks. The reality of a too big to fail bank failing is the end of all banks. And when you have the end of all banks, you have an end of a monetary system. And that's where we've been headed for a long time. And because of computers, because of derivatives, they've been able to hold it off. But it also required a lot of theft and stealing and war and you name it to keep this system going. But it's not an honest system. I think that's the biggest thing about it now. It's so manipulated and so corrupted that the next banking crisis like we had in 2008, we're going to see the true we're going to see the people of the United States stand up and say, no, that's it. No more bailouts, no more criminal banking. Let's start fresh. And it will be, loss of fortunes. It will also be a loss of debt. And that's really cool because the biggest problem now around the world is the amount of debt we have.
But they know that this day is going to have to come sooner or later. I mean, they can't keep pushing it off. Yes, they can rig the statistics, they can rig the markets, but the everyday person, I mean, they're feeling it every single day. I mean, people losing their jobs, retail stores closing, people losing their jobs from there, wages and salaries decreasing. They can't really raise interest rates. And if they do, you can see the real estate market starting to, crack and things like that. So eventually there's going to come a point where they're going to have to make a decision. No? Yes?
They've been saying that since literally, they were saying that exact same thing in the late 1919, 1920 when Woodrow Wilson left office. They've been saying it every year since. I mean, it gets to that point where, they have been able to rig the markets to control this unbacked fiat system since 1913. What's to stop another year or another 10 years or another 100 years because they have computer programs? The only thing to stop it now is making the decisions that we're making right now, that we are stopping it. We're going to take out the deep state. We're going to take out the bankers, and we're going to pull the plug on the old system. I think those decisions are being made if you look at the $100 bill, the brand new $100 bill, it's got gold all over the right side. And if you look really closely right above the 100, it says you reserve the right to overthrow your government at any time from the Declaration of Independence, right there on the $100 bill. So there are people within the Fed, within the Treasury, within the Trump administration, and the people, behind the scenes of the Trump administration, that are working to take out these criminals and implement something new and something more sound. Obviously, a gold standard would be better than the old thing, but it's not as practical. I think the right cryptos implemented the right way would be the best for us going forward. And it's clear to me that that's kind of what they're shooting for. And then we can reallocate money to the people of the United States, and every country can, do what they want. They have their own free will, but the United States has been planning this for a long, long time.
So you mentioned, if we had the right cryptocurrency and you believe we're moving in that direction where we might be using a cryptocurrency, why do you think the U.S. is going to be moving towards a cryptocurrency?
Well, I believe the Fed and the Treasury, and especially Alan Greenspan, have been involved in the creation of cryptocurrencies since the very early days of the Fed. That's what Root A is the computer programming term used by Alan Greenspan to write the first computer programs for the banks. So, I have a theory that's probably more than a theory that Alan Greenspan was heavily involved with the cryptocurrency guys before Bitcoin and during Bitcoin and after Bitcoin. It just makes sense because that's all he was doing at the time, is computer programming and dealing with the banking system and rigging markets. And if you know Alan Greenspan and you study him at all, he was the biggest advocate of going back to the gold standard back in the 1960s. And then he, ever since, has been dealing with the computer programs he learned from his buddy John Kemeny, the guy who invented basic computing. So yeah, I think the Satoshi Bitcoin, the 1 million Bitcoin held by the wallets of Satoshi Nakamoto, are actually being held for the United States population. And at some point it will be implemented. We'll see how that goes. And I also think Litecoin is going to be right in par with that. Litecoin, I think, will be used as a means of exchange because it's faster and it's a better way to mine Litecoin. It doesn't use as much energy as Bitcoin. And I think that's why Charlie Lee, the inventor of Litecoin, actually sold all his, or donated all his Litecoin, was that you don't want a central guy. If you're going to change out of the US dollar into something else, you don't want a central person being in charge of that. So Bitcoin, obviously Satoshi isn't around anymore or hasn't been heard from for years. And then Litecoin was the obvious means of exchange type of thing because it's fast and cheap, and you can use the Lightning Network and atomic swaps and all that to buy your cup of coffee. It just makes sense in the road to Ruta theory, and we all know that the NSA was involved in Bitcoin long before Bitcoin was released. That's been proven many times. But yeah, I think absolutely there are people within the United States government that are working to take down the banks. And it's coming from within the Fed. And that's what the Road to Ruta comic books were all about, talking about taking out they call them the big people. And we're still on that path. And so far, I think everything, I don't get absolutely everything right. But my theory hasn't changed. And the evidence that I've shown people really blows their mind when they take the time to look at it.
I mean, you mentioned before that, it's all about taking down the deep state and we're moving in the right direction. So do you think the good guys are winning right now?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Trump wouldn't be in office if they weren't. It was rigged, but it was rigged in a good way. So yeah, Trump is working with Trump is a bull in a china shop that the good guys, as I call them, put to basically do exactly what he's doing. Fight and scrape and scream and punch people. Meanwhile, in the background, these things are being done to take out the criminals, the pedophiles, the Rothschilds, the Clinton clan, the Bush clan, all that stuff, all the criminality of our old system is being slowly but surely taken out. It will come to a point where it's like finally they can say everything or most everything, and then you'll see arrests of kind of the George Soros types and things like that. But I do believe absolutely that Trump is working with the Chinese and with Russia to make this happen, because you can't just say, I'm going to take out the deep state of the world and you and a couple guys within the U.S. government make it happen. Look what happened to Kennedy, right? But you can, with the help of China and Russia and the leaders there, say, okay, we're going to work together to remove this evil cabal of criminals that have controlled our planet for so long. I believe it's going on right now. Absolutely.
So you think that Trump, behind the scenes, is working with Xi Jinping and Putin to coordinate this effort to bring down the deep state?
the people behind Trump are. Again, Trump's the bull in the china shop. So yeah, definitely.
There's many patriots that are working with him.
Mainly military. Okay. You go back to December of last year when Trump said the storm is here or something to that effect, when he had like 30 military generals sitting there having dinner with him at the White House. And you go check that out and see what he says. The storm has begun, I think it was. And then the Q stuff comes out. I absolutely believe a lot of that Q stuff is 100% real. And they try to spin it like, oh, no, it's just a conspiracy theory. Well, at some point when you do the research, you're going to find that most conspiracy theories have some kind of truth in them. And the spin of a conspiracy theory is that it tries to shut off your brain. When someone says, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, they try to shut off your brain. Well, conspiracies happen all the time. Just look at Enron. I remember saying that Enron was, it's a fraud. They're setting up these shell corporations. I was in that business at the time, and everybody was saying, oh, Bix, that's just a conspiracy theory. Well, what was it? It was a conspiracy fact at the end. So when you do the due diligence and you find out all the potential conspiracies that are out there, many of them are absolutely true, and then they get twisted a little sideways so that it's like they feed you misinformation just so you look crazier than you actually are. That's my take on it, because I am not afraid to talk about conspiracies at all, because I know it happens at the deepest level of government. As we're finding out with the Russia investigation, it turns out that it was the Clinton campaign colluding with the Russians.
True. I mean, if you look at some of the Q posts, it does say, and they're actually pointing the finger at the Clintons and many others. I mean, there's so many people involved in this. It's not just the Clintons. But what I wanted to ask you was what is happening right now with Trump's attorney Cohen, who kind of, is saying that, oh, there's a candidate that instructed him to, pay out these funds. And you see the mainstream media now saying that, oh, maybe we can start impeaching Trump. I mean, they're just going off and they're just crazy now. I mean, it's funny, and I'll let you speak in a sec, that every single mainstream media channel is saying the same exact thing. Like, he's doomed. He's going to be impeached. They got him. I mean, they're just all doing the same exact thing right now.
And they've been doing that since the day, like I said, the bull in the china shop. Did he pay off all the people he had sex with not to talk? Absolutely. Is that an impeachable offense? Not even close. It is not even. They can't even bring charges against him because he's a sitting president. They can say what they want. The deep state, the reason the media is saying all this stuff is that they are implicated too. And they are part of this deep state plan. So they're doing it to save their lives, literally, because when it gets exposed that there was a plot to overthrow the president of the United States, the beforehand, during, and after, this is a treasonous offense punishable by maximum penalty is death. So you will see some of these people put to death, and especially the co-conspirators like Brennan and Comey and Mueller and like big names and Clintons. I know it sounds weird now, but when they show the real evidence, and you're going to see the real evidence. Remember, the NSA has everything. They had Clinton's 30,000 emails. They got all the real damning stuff for the Clintons is the Anthony Weiner laptop. 650,000 documents, including videotapes and audio tapes, just the most damning stuff, horrific crimes against humanity. These people will be put to death if it goes to trial. The other thing is we got to wait till we get the new Supreme Court justice in, so that, because a lot of the Supreme Court justices are just as criminal, even in our courts. Most of these judges were put in by and paid off by the Clinton family, the Bush family, and those guys. So yes, it is a crazy time we're living in, but at the end of the day, Trump's going to stay or leave. It doesn't really matter. The takedown of the bad guys is still going to go forward.
I mean, I think you might have just answered my question, but let me just clear it up so everyone that's thinking probably the same thing I'm thinking. Why don't they just release all the information that they have? I mean, if they have everything, they have all the documentation from the uranium deal with the Clintons, they have the foundation information, they have all the emails from WikiLeaks. Why don't they just release all of it right now and get this over with?
It'd be too disruptive. Every bank would shut down. You'd lose your 401k. half the criminals will get away. Right now, they're getting them so they can arrest most of them. I mean, there's thousands of criminals that need to be arrested for all this stuff. So yeah, if they went full kimono, open the kimono and say, okay, here's everything, every bank would shut down. There's criminality runs right through the banking world, obviously, and it is bad. And there's murder for hire. There's all kinds of things. It would just be too disruptive. So they're trying to take out pluck them off as many as possible. One also, or two, three, four, so that they don't run away and they can capture them. And at some point they have to get to that moment. And that's why, even if there was an impeachable offense that Trump ever got caught for, all he would have to do is, if he cared about staying in the presidency, which if I were him, I'd seriously think about, hey, it might be a good time to leave anyway. These people are so crazy. But he is fighting the fight. He's doing his job for the United States. But at any moment, he could release all that information. It's like Trump. Why don't you release all this stuff that there's a FOIA request for? Because he can do that. He can make anything go from top secret to here it is public. He chooses not to because it's a timing thing. There's a lot of balls in the air. A lot of people getting ratted out, especially when I think it's about over 6,000 pedophile and human trafficking people have been arrested, and they're all telling on the people above them. The real power brokers of this stuff. So they're getting all the evidence to try to do it right. Would it be better had he just pulled the Band-Aid? I guess we won't know until it's all over. But right now, I would tell everybody, don't be afraid that we're going to lose this battle, because we're not. We are winning it, absolutely.
Do you think it's kind of odd that the timing of Manafort's trial and the release of the information from Cohen came out at exactly the same time?
It's one of those things. It is the bright, shiny object that they want you looking at this moment. I'll guarantee you, within 2 weeks, we're not even going to talk about Cohen or Manafort at all. It's kind of like, oh my God, Trump said they're bugging his office, and that was the big thing. He's crazy. Well, it was proven that they did bug his office, and what happened? Nothing. This stuff comes up, it's all over the news, and then it goes away. So the Manafort stuff, the Cohen stuff, it's the talk of the town today. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, next time we talk, let's write this down to remember to talk about it. We could say, oh my God, what happened to that Manafort stuff and the Cohen stuff? It'll just go away. It's not important. It's the shiny ball that they want you to look at while everything else is going on in the sides and then in the background.
So these deep state players, Clinton, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, and the rest,
Bush, McCain.
They're all part of it.
Absolutely.
All these. Q calls him no name for McCain, but they won't mention his name. But are they just gonna, sit there and wait for them to bring them in, or do you think they have some other type of plan? Because I don't see them just saying, hey, we give, yes, we did this, and, take us in. Do you think these people are going to run? Do you think they're going to do?
I don't think they can run. There's not many places you can run to anymore. Given that the NSA has all information, all electronic information, anywhere from credit cards being spent to, if one of these guys wants to disappear, he'd try to do what Saddam Hussein did, go to a little town and hide in somebody's basement. Well, these guys, they can't live that kind of life. They're used to the good life. And if they do, it's kind of punishment anyway. And the next time they pop their head on the grid, bang, they're gone. They're toast. They have to. And I don't think anybody, I think everybody can be found. And it's pretty easy to find people, especially famous people, because everybody knows what they look like. And, you're always going to have some snitch somewhere say, oh my God, Bill Clinton, I saw him last week down at the, the driving range at this little hole in the wall in East Texas. You're going to have that. When you're famous, you can't hide. And if you do hide, you're going to hide completely in a miserable existence. So yeah, I'm not worried that people are getting away. I think more and more evidence is being examined and fostered, and more people are turning evidence just to save their own hides. in the background. So we'll have a lot of action. I think it's coming up too. And if we're talking timing, I think September, October, November will be really exciting times for silver, for the cryptos, and also for the taking down of bigger names in the deep state.
So are you saying like there's going to be an October surprise? Is that what
I don't think it's a surprise anymore. I think it'll be very similar to 2008. Everything is building that way. So, we'll see. And it's just a click of a mouse at the U.S. Treasury to make it all happen.
Do you think the deep state will try to do something like maybe, a false flag or anything like that to distract from everything? And
yeah, well, it's possible. Yeah, everything's possible. Everything's on the table, but it won't work is the key. Their false flags are pretty obvious. And all it would take would the FBI or Trump or someone, obviously the FBI is corrupt, or someone within the good guys to come out and say, okay, this is a false flag. Here's all the evidence, and either leak it unofficially or officially. And, the unofficially is like through WikiLeaks. And they could put all these people in jail with a leak on WikiLeaks. And, why don't they all go to jail? Because the DOJ and the court system is all corrupt too. Because they would have to go with them. With the criminals that they would be arresting, they'd have to go with them. So it is being broken down. And I do think we're going to see another 2008 in the coming few months. And we are getting closer and closer. And I always said, the silver and gold prices and the crypto prices will be the lowest at the time they're released from manipulation. So they're not going to go up and, you're not going to buy silver to beat JP Morgan and beat them at that game. It'll be the lowest so that they get out the best they can, and then they're going to cut the prices loose and stop shorting. And then that's all it takes for silver is if JP Morgan doesn't short on this next run up for silver, it's game over.
Bix, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people see your work?
You go to my YouTube channel, Road to Ruta, or go to roadtoruta.com to get everything.
Fantastic. Bix, once again, thank you very much for being on the Spotlight channel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.